Hello Cinnamon Bun. So, Dan Harmon created Rick and Morty, but you may or may not know that he also created the plot embryo, hallowed be the universal pattern, linked in our descriptions and our hearts, which is the story creation tool that he and his writers use to craft every single episode. If you're new to my channel or you've only seen a couple of videos, you might not know that teaching the plot embryo and helping writers get amazing results with it is actually my full-time day job. The plot embryo can supercharge your storytelling, but it can be a little bit tricky to get the hang of in the beginning. So let's break down an episode of Rick and Morty so that you can see how the plot embryo works in action. Today, we're gonna break it down and get swifty. And spoiler warning, I'm going to spoil the entire crap out of this entire episode because that's what this whole video is about, so consider yourself warned, dum-dums. So first, let's take a quick look at the quadrants for this plot embryo. For the comfort zone, so that's the familiar realm, we have Earth just doing its normal thing. For the conflict zone, so that's the unfamiliar, we have the planet music competition. And for the internal quadrants, which cover the theme of the story, we have Morty's before state, which is the belief that I can't put my faith in Rick because he doesn't give a fuck, and then the realization, his after state, that Rick's power comes from not giving a fuck. So one thing that's interesting about this plot embryo is that Morty is actually the protagonist, and hopefully you will see why that will become clear as we go through it. So at plot point 1, it's really simple. We have Rick and Morty in their comfort zone at home watching TV. At plot point 2, we have a giant Cromulon head appears over the Earth and creates global disasters. They need an original hit song to get rid of it, and all famous musicians having died in an earthquake, it's up to Rick and Morty.
This head won't go away until Earth shows them it's got a hit song.
Impossible. Sanchez, are you a musician?
I dabble, Mr. President.
Get this man and his grandson on a Black Hawk to Area 51.
At plot point 3, we have Rick and Morty go to Area 51 to play a song for the Cromulon. Pleased with the song, it transports the entire Earth into the planet music competition.
Here. Morty, good music comes from people who are relaxed. Just hit a button, Morty, give me a beat.
Oh man, okay, alright, Oh yeah, you gotta get swifty. You gotta get swifty.
I like what you got. Good job. We asked them to show us what they got, and they did. But in the end, there can only be one planet music.
At plot point 4, we have the stakes established. If they lose, the Earth is going to be destroyed. Morty gets angry with Rick that he isn't taking the songwriting seriously, and he steals the portal gun to escape and save himself.
Morty, give me that!
You lied about the charge! You were just being lazy! Get back! Sit down!
Morty, just put it down. You don't know what you're doing.
I'm going to go find Mom and Dad!
No!
At this point, Ice-T reveals himself to be an alien, but won't help Rick with the songwriting because he just doesn't care about anyone or anything.
But I was frozen and exiled to the cosmos by my elders as punishment for not caring enough about anything.
The US military plans to nuke the Cromulons during Earth's performance, which doesn't seem like a great idea.
I'm setting the nuclear option to launch 1 minute into Earth's performance.
And by the way, put Justin in the comments if you also had no idea that this guy is actually a little cameo of Justin Roiland. At plot point 5, we have Morty's change of heart. Morty finds himself with Bird Person, who tells him that Rick's refusal to give a fuck is actually his strength.
Bird Person, you always stick up for Rick, but he doesn't care about anyone but himself. He doesn't think about the consequences of anything he does.
And as a result, he has the power to save or destroy entire worlds. And he is the reason you and I know each other, and the reason I'm alive at all.
What's that? Who's that baby?
Morty, suppose you could retrieve your family from Earth, but had to abandon Rick. How often do you think you might look up at the stars and wonder what might have been had you just put your faith in Rick?
So, having had this realization, Morty returns to help Rick with the performance. At plot point 6, the military nukes a Cromulon and it gets them disqualified from the competition. But Ice-T returns to block the laser beam and saves the Earth because he cares now.
Ice-T? That's right, it's me, Ice-T. I care now. You make me care more.
Rick and Morty play a weird improv song giving zero fucks and they win planet music, saving the Earth.
Here we go! Say it with me!
At plot point 7, the Cromulons put the Earth back and leave in peace. At plot point 8, the world is safe and planet music is no more, so other planets are saved too. And Morty gives a few less fucks now.
Yeah, we did it! Let's get a music album now!
So let's talk about theme in Get Swifty. It was only after I started dissecting this episode for this video that I realised how amazing the theme is in Get Swifty. Now, I can do plot embryos in my sleep, and a lot of the time, even just watching or experiencing a story, I can pick out the different plot points and elements, but theme went over my head completely in this episode until I started to dig deeper. And you guys, it's about creativity and perfectionism, and the setup of this episode, that the entire fate of the planet Earth depends on Rick and Morty's ability to write a catchy hit song on a crazy deadline, is absolutely perfect. Because the stakes are so over the top for something so seemingly unattainable. Because for some of us, every act of creation, whether that's writing music or creating any other kind of art, feels like life and death. It feels like everything hangs in the balance, like we're walking the knife edge of destruction, like we really are trying to save the world. But what Morty learns is that when it comes to creativity, the best thing you can do is not give a fuck.
I'm really bad at this, Morty. There are way too many buttons in this thing.
Mr. President, if I've learned one thing today, it's that sometimes you have to not give a fuck!
Rick saves the planet by improvising, by refusing to overthink the creative process, by surrendering to his instincts and not sweating it. And what I love about this is that it makes so much sense given what we know about Dan as a person from his podcast Harmontown. Dan has talked about how his show Community was his baby. He set himself insane standards for it, and in some sense maybe he even felt like it was his magnum opus. And Dan actually got fired from his own show, which continued terribly for a season without him before it became clear that they really needed him and he got hired back. Community as a show, while I absolutely adore it, had a really difficult, fraught time behind the scenes in production. Rick and Morty, on the other hand, Dan talks about as something which began as purely a fun passion project, where he and Justin Roiland would get to cut loose and be weird and just roll with it. And of course now, Rick and Morty has become his most iconic work and has had more commercial success than Community ever did. So the theme of Get Swifty, that creativity works better when you give less fucks and when you abandon the idea of creative perfection, makes perfect sense to me. But let's talk about Ice-T's theme. But Rachel, you might be thinking, Ice-T's theme is all about learning to care more, not less.
But I was frozen and exiled to the cosmos by my elders as punishment for not caring enough about anything.
Take it from me, Ice. You can't just float around space not caring about stuff forever.
Psh, man, watch me. Good luck, Rick.
Ice-T?
That's right, it's me, Ice-T. I care now. You make me care more.
Ice-T's tiny little subplot in this episode is a perfect example of how you can use subplots to explore different facets or aspects of the main theme. Ice-T learns to care more not about creative perfection, but about people. So when you put Morty's arc and Ice-T's arc together, you get a kind of conjugated theme. Give less fucks about artistic perfection and give more fucks about people. And that is how Get Swifty's plot embryo works. Now, of course, I don't have access to the original plot embryo used to create this episode, so that might look a little bit different, but consider this my best interpretation of what that original plot embryo might have looked like based on reverse engineering it from the finished episode. Now, be sure to tell me in the comments which episode you would like to see me break down next. Every episode of Rick and Morty is created using the plot embryo. To me, it's the perfect illustration of how much wild creativity you can bring to a story while still using that strong plot embryo structure as your foundation. If you are a writer and you find that your stories never turn out as you'd hoped, that your middle gets a little bit saggy, the end ends up being kind of deflated, then I created the Story Magic Academy for you. In it, I share my complete system from generating that first seed of a story idea all the way to turning it into a complete plot embryo ready to be written. It's where I've put all my best secrets and tips for getting the most out of the plot embryo framework and making the story creation process clear, practical, and gratifying. So here's what to do next. If you're watching this pretty soon after I released this video, then the enrollment for the Story Magic Academy is open now for just a few days more. If you're watching this sometime in the future, the Academy might be in session right now, but you can still follow that same link in the description and sign up to be notified next time the enrollment opens. And don't forget to signal to our overlords that this content is above average, perform the token gesture which indicates that you'd like to see more videos from me, and grant me access to your sacred and coveted notification center. Okay, I'm going to leave you with my favourite line from this episode.
You may my chores complete me as I complete them.
.com. This is so hard to say. Plot problems. I might just skip that part. Prot?
Yes, problems.
Problems. It sounds like a Rick and Morty character. My own stomach rumbled there and it put me off. Wabba-dabba-dub-dub. By Swiftying it. Do not give a fuck. Over the top for I just made half of that up. Maybe get swifty means like stop giving a fuck. Finally. That is not words. Words are not things. Get swifty in here. Consider yourself warmed. I just said it again! Oh my god. So consider yourself warmed. Warmed. Consider yourself warm. Consider yourself cozy. Yourself warmed. I just looked at you instead of the camera. Oh my god, consider yourself braised. I need to stop, I'm crying.
Take your pants down. Take your shit on the floor.
Take off your pants and your panties. Shit on the floor. Time to get swifty in here.
That's Mom's favourite line of all.
It's shit on the floor. Is that
the what embryo?
Yeah.
The plot embryo.
The plot embryo.